Steelers fans, welcome into the Knoll Road. Thanks for hitting the view button. So to us, Mike McCarthy comes off kind of like a world-class football BSer who's charmed his way into another NFL head coaching job. And the press session at the league meetings just further reiterated that for us. So today's show is asking, do you agree? How much does it matter? And is Coach McCarthy totally full of it? If that is true, can they still win big? Here we go.
To the corner of the end zone. Oh, for a touchdown!
All right, New Bear. Now, if I wanted to be optimistic, I would say Mike won 12 games 3 years in a row with the Cowboys. They have a really good roster. They have 12 picks in this draft. They could end up with such a great roster that almost any head coach could win the Super Bowl. So that's the opportunity roster-wise. I'm not totally down on this thing, but every time Mike McCarthy speaks, I'm just like, oh, boy, this guy is a BSer. What do you think?
It really is eerie, the similarities of Tomlin and McCarthy. And it's not just that McCarthy is like the offensive version of it. He's also the opposite speaker. Tomlin would come hit you with the thesaurus and the 7-syllable word, the Tomlinisms, like almost talking down to you. McCarthy is this, oh, shucks, Greenfield Avenue, we're going inside and we're going outside. I'm like, I guarantee you, like, after 20 years of Mike Tomlin, 19, if you're coming at me in the comments, I know. If you're Art Rooney and you're listening to Tomlin for 20 years, and then you get McCarthy coming in, you don't need Chris Shula because this is so different. It has to be, right? And then, I know you've got this branches on the tree, and we're going to peel this onion, and I'm just going down some cliches because I'm trying to do my version of what Mike Tomlin would do as we start talking about unpacking this suitcase of BS.
Yeah, and my belief is that, the lack of knowledge on a number of subjects reflects that he's just not totally dialed in. His finger is not on the pulse of what wins. He's not obsessed with the league. And the laziness, which is something that led to, people not having the best opinion of him in Green Bay, I think the laziness is what prevents him from using that tremendous base of knowledge to leverage that and outwork the league. Like, you need the best players and you need the wisdom, but you also have to have the work ethic to be tirelessly looking for any advantage you can bring to your team on game day. And I think Mike maybe used to be a hard worker, but now that he got to the top of the mountain, he's just like, yeah, I figured out how to be a head coach, and now I'm here to coach your football team. Where I think the McVays and Shanahans and maybe a couple of others are burning the midnight oil trying to find stuff out. So when they start talking about the league, whether it's their roster or otherwise, they're revealing their depth of knowledge, where I'm still waiting for Mike McCarthy to give me the first moment where I feel like I've learned something from listening to him talk about football in a public forum.
Mike Tomlin's last 12-win season was 2020. That was also the year that started 11-0 and was a little bit of a just like nothing felt real, right? There was a little bit of Truman Show, Wizard of Oz curtain, and as soon as it got pulled, they finished that year 12-5, right? Including an unceremonious exit like we know that they've had since 2016, right? I think that's the difference, is that McCarthy had the 3 12-win years in a row. He also won a playoff game in 2022, which is a whole lot more recently. They also lost spectacularly and had one of those, pee down your leg kind of moments where you go, man, is this team, is this quarterback, and how much is it McCarthy? How much is it Dak? And that was what happened at the end in Green Bay, where him and Aaron Rodgers are talking about, coming to blows on the sideline. Not that is end all be all, because how many OCs outside of Bill Belichick, I think Tom Brady tried to fight just about everybody, right? Like it's commonplace for quarterbacks, for head coaches, for OCs, for DCs, for these star guys to beef. The beef with Big Mike is that the way he's talking about things makes it clear that he's not paying attention, makes it clear that he's saying things to fill the void, to keep it moving, so you enjoy this conversation, you feel good about it, and then you almost don't take the step back to dig a little bit further into what he actually just said.
Yeah, yeah. So, at some point you need a great roster in football. The worse your coach, the better your roster has to be. And I really think that's how the Eagles have gotten it done with Doug Peterson and Nick Sirianni, a couple of guys that, aren't going to win all, Hall of Fame coaching for their reputation. Maybe they would get it done if they had the resume for it. But at this point, nobody thinks either of those guys are a Hall of Fame coach. But Howie Roseman outworked the league. So now you're looking at the personnel, the scouts, like, can you give Mike McCarthy such a good roster that he's able to actually overachieve in the playoffs instead of underachieve, which is pretty much what they've done since 2010 or 2011, since the Packers won the Super Bowl. Like Mike McCarthy's teams have been playoff underachievers, which is another way that you could compare to Mike Tomlin.
Because what you're talking about is like when you start talking about plus minus, and you're not just in the top 10, right? It's 2, it's 1, it's 1, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4. When you're top 5 and you're there time and time again, which would be the same type of thing you would want to say about Tomlin's defense, even though, I mean, when you really get into the screws of it, like a lot of those numbers are misleading too. And before we turn this into a whole punt on third down, rock fight type of conversation, I think it's pretty fair to say that people understand, admit, want to believe that change, meaning, hey, we're going to throw the ball in the middle of the field. Hey, we're not going to be afraid to do some things that we haven't done in a while here when we have the ball, because you just expect the defense to come with it. TJ Watt's still out there. Hey, Patrick Queen might look a whole lot better under Patrick Graham. And there's a reason to be excited about all that. I think what you're focusing on and what you've got me running, I mean, as hard as I can with what I got left in these Achilles tendons alongside, is that he's going to be stubborn because he didn't change. You watched him not change in Dallas. You got an up-close personal view of that. And that was good enough to be really good in the regular season. It wasn't good enough to get the job done in the playoffs.
Yeah. I think and his status as a BSer became immediately obvious with the Cowboys. Like there's this famous legendary story, and I think Tom Pelissero was the author that wrote about it, that visited him in Wisconsin on his farm and wrote this great story that Mike McCarthy had been hanging out with his guys in the barn, like studying football, and he'd watched every single snap of Cowboys football. And in the build up to the hire, that was the narrative. And then he immediately sat down at the press conference, kind of shrugged his shoulders, and admitted he just said what he knew the Jones family wanted to hear. So immediately it was like, oh my goodness, did that really just happen? But he'd been hired, so when he got hired by the Steelers, I was like, man, it must have happened again. Like when he's on the podium or making any public appearance, you wouldn't say he's charming or charismatic, would you, Newbear? But he is to NFL owners. Like he starts talking and they're like, holy crap, this is the guy to lead our organization, and both the Joneses and the Rooneys have done it. Meanwhile, he gets up there at the podium, and I don't know, maybe this is just the difference between how much media members and fans are paying attention compared to owners. Like maybe owners are just this naive because the money and the lifestyle is so good that they're not dialed. But when Mike McCarthy starts talking, and we'll get some of this audio video here in just a second, I think it's it's not difficult. You don't have to be studying the NFL 24/7, 365 for your BS radar to be going off pretty good.
Well, and it's not all bad BS, because when you think about what he was talking about with like Will Howard, because the talk around town was that, well, 31 other teams passed on him, not once, not twice, not 5 times. Because McCarthy said, if I was around drafting, this guy wouldn't have lasted till the 5th or 6th round. And you go, okay, well, that's good BS in as much as you're couching Aaron Rodgers taking his ball and going home. You're couching not having to take Ty Simpson at 21. You're trying to get people excited about 18 if that ends up being what you have to go to battle with. At the same time, everything else comes into question when all those other teams did pass 5 times, just like they did on Tom Brady.
I'm glad. Yeah.
What just is he really talking to Aaron Rodgers all the time? Is he really, you know what I'm saying? So it just when he does one thing, even when you want to kind of push into the middle and say, okay, that's not bad, that's interesting, that could be good, it makes you question everything else around it. That's the thing.
Yes. Okay. It's inconsistent, right? Each answer is an attempt to put words out there that will satisfy the asker of the question, independent of what other facts or other things that he might have said. And I'm glad that you brought up his Will Howard stuff, because that's where I wanted to start. We'll go ahead and share the screen. Here's Mike McCarthy. And, my first question here is just going to be, do you believe Mike knows the year and round that Will Howard was taken? Here we go.
The biggest thing with Will, and it's probably, consistent with young quarterbacks, they got to win from the pocket. At the end of the day, 9-10 games a year are going to come down to the 2-minute drill. That's what the stats tell you. That's the way we train. So his ability to win from the pocket, because I think he has everything else. I mean, people get caught up on what round he went in, but if I was drafting players that year, he wouldn't have been around in the 5th or 6th round. I mean,
Okay, first question right there for you. If I was picking players the year that he was taken, every Steelers fan knows that we just witnessed him standing on the sideline for his rookie year. Does Mike McCarthy know he was drafted in 2025? And does he know which round it was? Was it the 5th round or was it the 6th round? And do those things matter? No, they don't. But somebody that is dialed into football and is obsessing about what's going on with the Steelers and this roster in ways that he says he does. I mean, are you really a Pittsburgh guy? I mean, I think most Steelers fans know how long Will Howard has been in the league and which round that he was drafted in. But if you're just kind of out there enjoying your life, enjoying your off season, you're no longer obsessed with football. Your career's in the rearview mirror. You're not waking up thinking, holy crap, I got to figure something else out that I didn't know about the NFL today so I can get back into this league that is so fun for me. I think he enjoys being a head coach. I think he really enjoys the lifestyle of it, the celebrity of it. But I think when you're looking around the league and finding the guys, it's the combination of that experience and the hard work. And I just don't think he's bringing that hard work component to the table anymore, Newberry.
Well, this answer in and of itself is especially challenging when the other side of it is it's about mobile quarterbacks, and it's about escaping the pocket, and it's about throwing on the run, and it's about extending plays. And he kind of gives you the everything answer, just like he kind of is the everyman coach. He's a very meat and potatoes guy. And if you put meat and potatoes and broccoli and corn and everything that you could possibly fit on that plate, and you push it all around long enough, eventually you touch all the food groups. And that's kind of what he does when he answers these questions. Is he says something that's true, and you believe wins games. You win from the pocket. 90% of these games come down to the 2-minute drill. The very preceding thing is I need a mobile quarterback who can extend plays, and that's where Aaron makes such a big difference and did for all those years, starting with Joe Montana, which, going back to all these different quarterbacks that he's gotten credit for, maybe a bit of a reach, maybe a bit of a stretch over time. But, it's either the preceding thing or the next thing that makes you go, well, which thing is the thing, and which guy has the head above in a quarterback battle if there were to be one. Think about if they were to draft Drew Aller and pit him against Will Howard, or if they were to draft Cole Payton and pit him against Will Howard. And you go, okay, well, how are we really judging this thing? And that's the part of it that if you're talking yourself into really liking Mark McCarthy as a coach and being a leader of this team, you're going, oh, well, he's going to give the defense so much to think about. They got to practice for everything. And then you want to lean into that. And then you take a step back and you go, whew, buddy, that's a lot of fat to chew on, because things didn't end well in Green Bay. Things didn't end well in Dallas. And I know I'm the first person to say nothing ends well. If it was still good, it would never end, right? That's the whole reason why. But then you put yourself in those situations and you go, was he telling Aaron to run more or run less? Was he telling Dak to run more or run less? Was he calling it accordingly? Especially when you look back, and I always think about the 15-1 year after the Super Bowl in Green Bay, when they got beat like 37-20. They lost by I think 17 to the Giants, and Rodgers had one of his worst games. It wasn't like he threw 4 picks, but he was 26 of 46, 25 of 47, when your running backs are getting 5 and 6 a pop, and you can go, yeah, game flow, game script, all those different things. But the way that he does the press circuit, the junket, any of these things where you put a microphone in his face and you just let him keep talking, right? It puts you in a position where if you want to find blame when that time comes, you can just go grab the opposite of whatever happened and slap it right on this thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans want to find the reason to believe right now, and I respect that. I totally do. I just have to speak my truth, and my truth is a significant amount of Mike McCarthy fatigue, and I see this as evidence that even after getting fired again, he didn't really double down and say, okay, Mike, you only got one chance and it's going to be with your hometown Pittsburgh Steelers. We better really go for it now. I don't think that's happening. And, you brought up the Drew Aller thing. Like, could you imagine them bringing in Aller or Nussmeier or Simpson to have a young man QB battle? No team, no coach wants multiple young guys in a quarterback controversy. That's just not something they do. But he did say he's looking forward to drafting another guy.
Yeah.
After saying all the great stuff about Will Howard, he's also talking about wanting to draft another guy. It's at war with his own credibility when he does that to himself. He said, I'm hopeful there will be a quarterback at the right time for us to possibly add to our roster. With 12 big picks, we want to have a hell of a class. I don't know how you could do that and also still believe in Will Howard.
Yeah, so timing is everything, quite literally. And Aaron Rodgers has to make a decision here in the next couple of weeks, because the one thing that you talked about, respecting the hopium, the one way it doesn't turn into copium is if it is 8, and 8 has a chance to be great because of what they do in this draft and how they protect him and the weapons that they give him and the defense that they continue to bolster. Because the very same conversation that you have about overcoming McCarthy, you're still going to be talking about overcoming the quarterback, whether it's Rodgers, Will Howard, or any rookie you insert wherever you take them in this draft.
All right, next Mike McCarthy clip that I feel like is just dripping in complete BS, and this one's crazy. It could just be a misspeak, but he was asked about this team being in a rut. He disagreed and says he thinks that, he's looking at a playoff team, and it was a playoff team, and then it led to this unfortunate step.
I thought they had some really good moments, and I was just talking to Nick Herbing about this. I really liked the vibe of the team coming down the stretch. I thought they were coming together, and he was telling me, but we were talking about the locker room. I said, I thought you guys really, were positioned to make a run, and that's just.
Okay, so I don't know how you could have watched the end there and thought they were in a position to make a run, but you want to be a coach, you want to be optimistic. That I get. I don't understand calling him Nick Herbing. Like, do you know that it's Nick Herbig? I genuinely do not know if Mike McCarthy knows that there's no N in the word Herbig. And then, I wonder, like, beyond that, you should have lost to Baltimore. You should have lost 4 of your last 7 games. The Detroit win was nice, but other than the Detroit game, like, what were you watching in December and early January that made you feel like this team was headed in a good direction? Was it them getting absolutely waxed by Houston that made you feel good? Like, what exactly made you feel like, boy, this thing, we really, we're close? No, that didn't happen. Now, you could say, when I look at this roster and I look at how last season ended, I think we should have been better than that. We should have been sharper than that. We should have been going into the playoffs on the front foot with this kind of team instead of sliding in based on a missed field goal. And we need to play better in the playoffs. And it's an embarrassment of what happened again, capping a decade-long struggle in the playoffs. Like, those would have been accurate statements that would have connoted some sort of authority and understanding of what the F happened to this organization, in yet another postseason failure. But I just think Mike is really uneducated about what's on this roster. He doesn't know how to say the last names of some of its best players, and is trying to BS his way into charming the fans like he did the Rooney family, apparently.
If anybody is going to tease me for mispronouncing draft picks, like, I'm not going to go that far down the rabbit hole, because I'm the first person to admit that even with my last name, I bleep shit up all the time. I do think it's funny in as much as, like, how far does that go? Because I think you see that a lot where you cover the team in Dallas with Jerry Jones, and you know that he actually doesn't know.
He doesn't know the players. He's trading moral futures all day.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And the thing we have to take into account here, that this isn't hope, and this isn't speculation, and this isn't like trying to make something out of nothing or any of the things in between. Rooney wasn't gonna bring in Chris Shula, and this is why I'm mad at myself, that we were never getting a whiz kid, because the bridge between Mike Tomlin and whoever comes after the guy who replaces Tomlin, you want to be the guy who replaces the guy who replaces Nick Saban. You don't want to be DeBoer down at Alabama. You don't want to be, whoever steps in after whatever the great coach and whatever sport it is that you love with whatever team that you follow. You want to be the guy who replaces the guy after he fails, right? Because they weren't going to bring in some new dude, some young kid to come in and shit on everything Tomlin had done with 19 consecutive non-losing seasons in a Super Bowl. That just wasn't going to happen. And I got my hopes up because that's what needed to happen organizationally, we thought, to get better everything, right? Better scouting, better drafting and developing and free agencying and facilitying and all the things. What's really going to save McCarthy's ass is Omar Khan doing his job in a world without Mike Tomlin. And Omar Khan and the moves that they've already made, where they're not just spending money to spend money, they're making strategic moves to fill holes on draft charts or on depth charts so that they can take best player available in the draft. And they're putting themselves in a position to basically not let any one person tear this thing down. If TJ Watt gets hurt, we got a couple more guys who can step up, right? If Aaron Rodgers takes his ball and go home, here's a trade, or here's the draft and develop, and then here's the roster that we insulate that rookie with. And we have to at least acknowledge the fact that both of those two things can be true in this universe, right? That he's here for a lot of reasons. Greenfield Ave, the guy who replaced the guy that everybody loved because he never had a losing season, all those things. And there might just be an infrastructure around him with aging vets, young, fresh legs. We're going to add 8 or 10 more of those. 8 brings his ball back instead of taking it and going home.
Yeah.
No one person, no one thing is dictating this anymore. And that might actually be the change we all needed.
Yeah, and sometimes the coach is in the right place at the right time, like Barry Switzer following Jimmy Johnson with the Cowboys. I hate to bring that up going back to 95, but
you and me could have coached that team.
Right. So the Steelers can overcome this. And if you look at how good the roster is right now and what is in the cards with this draft, and then how aggressive they were last summer and during the season with the trades, like, you could make a team that is so good, it could be one of the best teams of this century. And on top of that, Patrick Mahomes is still hurt. Other than him, the Chiefs roster is the worst roster it's ever been at any point in the offseason. What is this? Is this Mahomes' 9th year in Kansas City? The roster has never been this bad going into the draft. On the defensive side, they've lost key defensive backs almost every year. They lost another linebacker. They only have 2 pass rushers. And then obviously what's going on with the Ravens and the Bills, like, there's a reason that the highly flawed New England Patriots ended up in the Super Bowl. And if it wasn't them, it would have been the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix. Like, this thing is very, very doable in spite of, everything that we've said about Mike McCarthy. And I also want to say, as a significant point of clarification, Patrick Graham and Brian Angelico could very much help them overcome that. I want to very much give those guys the compliments that they deserve. Having Mike as your head coach doesn't have to be fatal, but I will say this: if your head coach is a BSer and he doesn't have a thorough understanding of what wins, will Angelico, be given the opportunity to have authority and autonomy, or will Mike say, "I know better"? Well, this is getting a little too fancy over here. Listen, I know better, and I know what Aaron Rodgers.
No. That's right there. That's the answer.
Oh, you're trying to bring this Kevin O'Connell stuff into our room, please.
That's the answer. If Aaron Rodgers lets it happen, because so we removed Tomlin, right? We brought in all these new coaches, but then Aaron Rodgers becomes the thing that is the sticking piece, the connective tissue. So, like, this is going to be a fascinating case study, character study, football character study. And I mean, you think it would only be one more year of him, right? But what that would give you is 2 years or a year and then the full next offseason with Will Howard or Nussmeier. I'm not even going to say Ty Simpson's name, or Aller or whatever. I mean, the thing you have to remember is Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Like when everyone talks about the QB school, and I truly believe Rodgers is the only credit that McCarthy is due, if he is due any. He didn't make Aaron Brooks take the leap, even though they won that crazy playoff game against the greatest show on turf, stepping in for Jeff Blake. He didn't make Joe Montana better. That was 37-year-old Joe Montana, and he was a quality control coach. Don't even get me started about all the 49ers versus Chiefs, Gerback and Bono. They had career years because they just played, because they weren't playing in San Francisco, and then they played in Kansas City. That includes Montana. Like that getting usurped by Steve Young. So, you go through – Dak Prescott threw for 49.02 before he even knew who McCarthy was. So, like, Aaron Rodgers sitting for 3 years and marinating and taking the ball from here, right, to here and being the cool guy that we all got to see step in and really take the league by storm for over a decade and have a reinvigoration of himself after McCarthy as well and win more MVPs. But guess what he never did again? Win a Super Bowl. And the best chance that they ever had coming off the one they won, they almost quite literally fumbled it. And they did that at a couple of different points in time. And Dak threw one away, maybe not a Super Bowl, but certainly what should have been an NFC Championship caliber team in Dallas. And so then it goes, okay, well, how much does this come back to predictability? How much does this come back to nuance and the things you were talking about, this Kevin O'Connell stuff, and things are getting too crazy and too cute? Like 2026 becomes a foundational year for 27 and beyond, really the other 4 years of his contract, if Rodgers is coming back, which is still a scary thought.
It is. The draft is an exciting thought, and it's just a couple of weeks away now. We'll be back soon with more Steelers team-building content. Please tell us what you think down below. Engage.
One quick thing to think about, though. I want to know what Steelers Nation thinks about this. If you're still listening here all the way to the end, we really appreciate you. All that stuff helps. And, like the video. If you like the video, engage. Tell us what you think. Here's one thing I want to know what you think. When you look at this roster, do you want them to go get Pregnan, Bisontis? Do you want them to go get Vega at 21? Or do you believe in this mantra, talking out of both sides of your mouth, that they want guys who can do more than one thing? Meaning you wouldn't just draft a left guard. You would be looking more at a guy like Nwaiwu or Gulbin or even Trey Zune later in the draft, these guys that can play center and guard, or a Tristan Lee, a tackle who might kick into guard. And maybe it's Caden Proctor because you like him moving to guard, and they're going to draft Markel Bell and just have the biggest, baddest left side. Forget Broderick Jones's contract. Forget the neck. Let's obliterate all that, right? Like, do you believe that they should go get BPA truly, or do you think that they're going to deliver on this thing that McCarthy is now preaching about being able to do more than one thing?
All right, let's talk about that next time as we continue this build-up to the draft. Like and sub on the way out. Tell us what you think in the comments. Till next time, we'll see you here on the Knoll Road.